Oklahoma State has apparently decided enough is enough of the Mike Gundy experience. He's been fired, according to On3, ESPN, and others.
Oklahoma State's shocking move has ended the Mike Gundy era after 21 seasons, but his true legacy lives with the NFL players he sent to the pros, who are now speaking out on the real Gundy. Their stories, loyal, conflicted, and raw, may be the clearest window into who Gundy truly was as a coach. The NFL voices, relationships, silence, and what wasn't said. The college football world was stunned when news broke on September 23, 2025, that would forever alter the landscape of Oklahoma State athletics. Mike Gundy was fired as head football coach after 21 seasons, ending a tenure that had transformed the Cowboys from afterthoughts into Big 12 contenders. The dismissal came after a devastating one, two start that included a 69-3 humiliation at Oregon, and a shocking 19-12 home loss to Tulsa, the first loss to Tulsa since 1951.
We've got more breaking news, this time in college football, where Oklahoma State has fired longtime head coach Mike Gundy. That's been confirmed by our Matt Zenitz. 56-year-old leaves his alma mater, the program's all-time winningest coach, 170 wins over 21 seasons. Things have soured recently for him and his program. Cowboys winning just 3 games a year ago.
But what makes this story truly fascinating isn't just the firing itself. It's the deafening silence that followed from the very players who should have known Mike Gundy best, the NFL professionals he coached and developed over more than 2 decades. To understand the significance of this silence, we need to examine the complex web of relationships Gundy built with the 42 NFL players he developed during his tenure, including 6 first-round draft picks like Dez Bryant, Justin Blackmon, and Russell Okung. The relationship between Gundy and his NFL alumni tells a tale of evolution, complexity, and ultimately complicated loyalty. In the early years of his tenure, Gundy established himself as a fierce defender of his players, most memorably captured in his legendary 2007 press conference defending quarterback Bobby Reed. Take Dez Bryant, the 3-time Pro Bowl receiver who played for Gundy from 2007 to 2009. Bryant's journey at Oklahoma State was tumultuous. He faced academic suspensions and off-field issues that could have derailed his career, but Gundy stood by him, providing the structure and support that helped Bryant become a first-round draft pick and successful NFL career. Bryant consistently defended Gundy throughout various controversies, calling him the father figure I needed, and crediting the coach with believing in him when others didn't. During the 2020 OAN controversy that nearly ended Gundy's career, Bryant tweeted support saying, "Coach Gundy has my back always. Real recognize real. Learn and grow, pokes," showing the deep loyalty that Gundy had earned through his unwavering support of players in difficult situations. Barry Sanders, the Detroit Lions Hall of Famer who was actually Gundy's teammate during the late 1980s, provided another perspective on Gundy's character. Sanders consistently praised Gundy's leadership qualities, and in the immediate aftermath of the firing, he posted on social media, "Mike was there from day one. Loyal Cowboy through and through. Changed the game here. #pokes-up." The most nuanced relationship, however, belonged to Mason Rudolph, the Tennessee Titans quarterback who played for Gundy from 2014 to 2017. Rudolph offered a particularly insightful defense of Gundy's adaptability in a 2024 interview, saying, "When the NIL landscape changed, Gundy jumped at the opportunity to change with the times, and I think his team's been better for it." This defense was particularly significant because it directly contradicted one of the primary criticisms that would eventually lead to Gundy's downfall. Tylan Wallace, the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, provided perhaps the most revealing insight into Gundy's coaching style when he said in 2024, "He's a player's coach for one. He's honest and doesn't sugarcoat things. That helped us bond as a team." Wallace's comments came during the 2020 OAN controversy, highlighting Gundy's ability to maintain player support even during turbulent times. But perhaps the most complicated relationship was with Chuba Hubbard, the Carolina Panthers running back who would lead a player revolt that nearly cost Gundy his job in 2020. The story of their relationship encapsulates everything complex about Gundy's legacy with NFL players. In June 2020, amid nationwide protests following George Floyd's death, Gundy posted an Instagram photo wearing an OAN t-shirt, a far-right news network known for controversial social justice stances. Hubbard's response was swift and uncompromising. "I will not stand for this. This is completely insensitive to everything going on in society, and it's unacceptable. I will not be doing anything with Oklahoma State until things change." What followed was remarkable. Rather than dismiss Hubbard's concerns, Gundy met with his players, listened, and issued a public apology. Hubbard later acknowledged that Gundy stepped up after the incident, though he noted that the damage to team trust lingered. This incident perfectly captured the duality of Gundy's relationships with his players: genuine care coupled with cultural blind spots. The complexity deepens. When we examine voices from different eras, Colin Oliver, a current OSU linebacker who played under Gundy from 2020 to 2025, described the coach's approach. When you first get here, you're really scared to talk with the head coach. If you stick it out with him, he'll stick it out with you. He's honest and not sugarcoating things. However, not all voices were uniformly positive. Alfred Williams, the former NFL linebacker who played against Gundy in college, maintained allegations from 1989 that Gundy used racial slurs during a game. In 2021, Williams reiterated, "I won't back down from speaking about what happened," describing the incident as racist behavior that connected to Gundy's broader history with racial sensitivity. These relationships, supportive, complex, sometimes strained, make the silence following Gundy's firing all the more remarkable and telling.
True, but it's also, as much as accomplishments you want to talk about those, it is a performance-based business. It's not a family, right? This is a business, and it's performance-based, and the performance has not been up to par.
Several factors might explain this silence. The firing occurred on a Tuesday afternoon during the NFL's regular season, when active players are focused on preparation and performance. However, social media has made it incredibly easy for athletes to offer quick statements of support. A simple tweet takes seconds to compose. Most tellingly, the silence might reflect concerns about Gundy's late career trajectory. His resistance to fully embracing NIL opportunities and the transfer portal put him at odds with the sport's evolution. NFL players, who understand better than anyone the importance of adapting to change, may have viewed Gundy's reluctance as a significant weakness. The firing, breakdown, reasons, and what comes next. The story of Gundy's downfall isn't just about wins and losses. It's about a coach who failed to adapt to a rapidly changing landscape and ultimately lost touch with the very foundations that made him successful.
And they haven't won a big game in the Big 12 since 2023. All right, we've got Brad Crawford to break this down. And if you've been following the game and you've been hearing the rumors here for a little bit, doesn't come as surprising, but just give me your thoughts of what we're learning today.
The firing came after a catastrophic one, to start to the 2025 season, but the roots of Gundy's dismissal stretch back much further. The immediate triggers were impossible to ignore. A 69-3 annihilation at Oregon that marked the worst loss of Gundy's career, followed by a stunning 19-12 home defeat to Tulsa, the first loss to their in-state rival since 1951.
Just took a 66-point loss on the chin at Oregon 2 weeks ago, and then to come home last week as a double-digit favorite and lose to Tulsa, you just knew that was going to be it for Mike Gundy.
Look, he's been a good coach for a long time, especially at this program where he's got, 3 Big 12 Coach of the Year honors.
But these games were symptoms of deeper, more systemic problems that had been festering for years. The 2024 season had already exposed Gundy's program as fundamentally broken, finishing 3-9 9 record in Big 12 play, the worst performance of his entire tenure and the program's first losing season since 2005. The Oregon game, in particular, revealed the full extent of Gundy's disconnect from modern college football. Before the game, Gundy made comments about NIL spending disparities, essentially pre-excusing what everyone could see coming. Oregon's Dan Lanning later revealed that Gundy's comments about spending differences had actually fired up the Ducks, turning what should have been motivation into bulletin board material for the opponent.
Does he just fall into this bucket, Brad, of coaches that have had to adapt to this new landscape of college football and up to this point have not been able to get to that bar?
Definitely so. We saw Washington State's head coach say over the weekend that he wishes he had the resources that his rival Washington had. He later apologized for that, but Mike Gundy said a couple weeks ago before that road loss to Oregon, he doesn't have the money.
Athletic Director Chad Weiberg's statement announcing the firing was telling in its language. The program needed to move in a new direction to meet elevated expectations. This wasn't just about recent performance. It was about fundamental philosophical differences about how to build and maintain a competitive program in the modern era. The primary factor behind Gundy's dismissal was his stubborn resistance to fully embracing the NIL, name, image, and likeness revolution and the transfer portal era. While Oklahoma State had spent approximately $7 million on NIL over 3 years, programs like Oregon were investing tens of millions. This wasn't just a resource issue, it was a philosophical one.
I thought this will go away. Surely this can't last. And then it just kept building momentum. And then after a point, about 18 months ago, I said, this is not going away. We're going to have to make some real adjustments.
This clip from Big 12 Media Days reveals everything wrong with Gundy's approach to the modern era. His admission that he hoped the NIL revolution would go away and that he took 18 months to realize it was permanent shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how college athletics had evolved.
So the truth be known, this portal class from January is the first class that we ever bought. We had not bought portal goods.
Wow.
That hurt us. Hurt us the last year or so from a depth standpoint. And that was nobody's fault. That's not the administration's fault, not the donors. That was really kind of my fault, because what I had done was taken money that had been raised through donations and spread it amongst the troops somewhat evenly to the current players.
Gundy's admission that Oklahoma State's 2025 transfer portal class was the first class that we ever bought is a stunning revelation. While other programs had been aggressively pursuing portal talent for years, Gundy was essentially admitting that his program had been competing with one hand tied behind its back.
Yeah, Sam, there's one constant in the coaching profession, and that constant is change. Whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or in the rare instances, 21 years at the same place in this profession is extremely rare.
The consequences of Gundy's late adaptation to modern college football were evident everywhere. Oklahoma State's roster experienced massive turnover, with 65 new players, including 41 transfers, but the additions were described as good to average players, rather than difference makers. When you're already playing catch-up in a competitive landscape, settling for mediocre additions is a recipe for disaster. Beyond the NIL issues, Gundy had also lost the locker room in ways that became increasingly apparent. Internal reports described him as appearing checked out and operating on autopilot during his final season. The passionate coach who had once erupted in defense of his players seemed disengaged from the very job that had defined his adult life. The fan alienation was equally problematic. After the Tulsa loss, "Fire Gundy" chants were audible on the ESPN broadcast, a humiliating public rejection of a coach who had given Oklahoma State the most successful era in program history. Now, with Gundy gone, Oklahoma State faces the challenge of rebuilding both its roster and its culture. Doug Meacham, the offensive coordinator, has been named interim head coach while the program conducts a national search for Gundy's replacement. The immediate priority is roster retention. A 30-day transfer portal window opened immediately upon Gundy's firing, and 2 2026 recruits have already decommitted, including highly rated in-state running back Caden Jones.
Oklahoma State needs an influx of cash to attract some new candidates here, some fresh blood that'll be able to attract talent to Stillwater, because it's a very difficult place to recruit. It's a very difficult place to make them go through the transfer portal when other big programs in the Big 12 are going after them. They need, obviously, a fresh start here, but they also need a new approach when it comes to NIL and their entire administration.
The coaching search has already begun to generate significant interest. Leading candidates include former Oklahoma State quarterback Zach Robinson, currently the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator, who would bring both NFL credibility and deep program connections.
Another coach that may come to mind that's going to be very popular among Oklahoma State people is Zach Robinson, the former quarterback at Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy, now the offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons. He, of course, coached under Sean McVay for many years with the Los Angeles Rams, and McVay assistants are very hot.
Other candidates being discussed include G.J. Kinney at Texas State, Colin Klein at Kansas State, and Ben Arbuckle at Oklahoma. The common thread among these candidates is their youth, their familiarity with modern college football, and their willingness to fully embrace the NIL era. Current players have remained largely silent about the coaching change, but insiders report that the team meeting following Gundy's firing was described as emotional and quiet. The challenge for any new coach will be rebuilding both the culture and the roster in a program that had become increasingly disconnected from the modern realities of college football. For Gundy himself, the future remains uncertain. Reports suggest he wants to return to coaching, but at 58 years old, and with the baggage of his recent failures, opportunities at the highest level may be limited. His best path forward might be in the media, where his personality and knowledge of the game could translate well to television analysis. The controversies, scandals, and the decline. The story of Mike Gundy's controversial moments begins with what should have been his finest hour, the legendary "I'm a man, I'm 40" rant that made him a household name. On September 22, 2007, just one day before the 18th anniversary of his 2025 firing, Gundy unleashed a 3-minute tirade that would define his public persona for years to come.
Anybody hasn't read this article, I don't read it. This was brought to me by a mother with children. I think this is worth reading. Let me tell you why I want to talk about this article. 3/4 of this is inaccurate. It's fiction.
The rant began with Gundy defending his quarterback Bobby Reed from criticism by Oklahoman columnist Jenny Carlson, but it quickly escalated into something much more personal and revealing.
And had to deal with the child when he is upset, and kick a person when he's down. Here's all that kid did. He goes to class. He's respectful to the media. He's respectful to the public. And he's a good kid. And he's not a professional athlete. And he doesn't deserve to be kicked when he's down. If you have a child someday, you'll understand how it feels.
The passion was genuine, but the climax of the rant revealed something deeper about Gundy's personality, an aggressive, confrontational approach that would resurface in more problematic ways throughout his career.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40! I'm not a kid! Write something about me. Or our coaches. We'll write about a kid that does everything right, that's heart's broken, and then say that the coaches said he was scared? That ain't true!
While this rant was celebrated at the time and even parodied in commercials, it established a pattern of behavior that would prove increasingly problematic. Bobby Reed, the very player Gundy was defending, later told ESPN that the rant basically ended my life and strained their relationship, ultimately leading to his transfer. The pattern continued throughout his career. Gundy's relationship with the media was consistently antagonistic, with multiple incidents of him threatening reporters or making inappropriate comments. In 2022, after a bowl game loss, he told a reporter, "Don't be an ass," when asked about staff changes, threatening to revoke credentials over a legitimate question.
There's been a lot of criticism of Taylor. How vital was it to you that he gets off to a good start in this game?
Criticism where? From where?
Time, noise.
From where?
Twitter, radio. Yeah.
Oh, I'd give a rat's ass about Twitter.
This clip shows Gundy's dismissive attitude toward criticism and his crude language in press conferences, behavior that became increasingly problematic as social media amplified every controversial statement. But it was the racial controversies that most seriously damaged Gundy's reputation and may explain the silence from NFL players, many of whom are African American. The allegations date back to 1989, when Gundy was still a player at Oklahoma State and was accused by Colorado linebacker Alfred Williams of using racial slurs during a game. While Gundy denied these allegations, they resurfaced in 2020 during a much more serious controversy. In June 2020, amid nationwide protests following George Floyd's death, Gundy posted an Instagram photo of himself wearing a One America News, OAN, t-shirt. For a coach with a predominantly black roster to promote a far-right news network during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement was breathtakingly tone-deaf. The response was swift and devastating. Chuba Hubbard, Oklahoma State star running back and future NFL player, led a player revolt that threatened to destroy Gundy's career. Over 35 players joined the protest, demanding everything from diversity hiring to banning OAN on campus Wi-Fi. Gundy's response to this crisis was telling. Rather than immediately apologize, he initially seemed defensive before eventually meeting with players and issuing a public apology. The incident led to an internal review that found Gundy had lacking relationships with players, but concluded there was no evidence of racism. However, the damage was done, and trust between Gundy and many of his players never fully recovered. The controversies continued into his final years. In 2024, when star running back Ollie Gordon was arrested for DUI, Gundy's defense of his player crossed into inappropriate territory. At Big 12 Media Days, Gundy said, "Have I done that and not gotten caught? Have I had 2 or 3 beers and drove? 1,000 times in my life," essentially admitting to repeated drunk driving while minimizing his player's serious offense. The decline in Gundy's performance became undeniable in his final seasons. After reaching the Big 12 championship game in 2021 with a 12-2 record, the program began a steep decline that culminated in the disaster of 2024.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There was a time when Oklahoma State was a feared opponent by any Big 12 team, but that time has passed. That time has come to an end after a loss to an in-state team in Tulsa, after a 3-9 season last year, in which you were 0-9 in your conference, did not win one Big 12 game.
The 2024 season was a complete disaster. Oklahoma State went 3-9, including 0-9 in Big 12 play, the first time in program history they failed to win a single conference game under Gundy. The losses weren't just defeats, they were humiliations, including a 52-0 shutout loss at Colorado that exposed how far the program had fallen. Gundy's relationship with fans also deteriorated dramatically during this period. In November 2024, after another poor loss, he lashed out at critics, calling them failures who can't take care of their family, and suggesting they weren't qualified to criticize his program. This comment alienated the very fan base that had supported him through 2 decades of ups and downs.
Let's get to something that Brandon had mentioned, and I also brought up with Brad Crawford last segment, guys, and it's sort of like these tenured coaches, if you will, dealing with what we see in the new college football landscape over the last handful of years. Brandon, has there been sort of Mike Gundy and some other coaches the ability or inability to adapt to the time?
This question gets to the heart of Gundy's downfall. He wasn't just a coach who had a few bad seasons. He was a coach who fundamentally failed to adapt to a changing sport. While other coaches embraced NIL and the transfer portal, Gundy resisted, complained, and ultimately fell behind.
I think it's just coaches who are resisting change and then try to change when it's too late. You're solid with Mike Gundy. He's fired. You're seeing it currently in process in real time with Dabo Swinney at Clemson.
The comparison to Dabo Swinney is particularly apparent. Both coaches built successful programs using old school methods, but when the sport evolved, they initially resisted rather than adapted. The difference is that Swinney still has time to change course, while Gundy waited too long. The most damning aspect of Gundy's decline wasn't just the losses, it was his apparent lack of accountability. Instead of taking responsibility for the program's failures, he consistently blamed external factors: NIL spending, administrative support, even the fans themselves. This victim mentality was a far cry from the passionate coach who once declared, "Come after me," when defending his players. The highs of Gundy's career were genuinely impressive. His transformation of Oklahoma State from a program with a .465 historical winning percentage to .653 under his leadership was one of the great rebuilding jobs in modern college football. The 2011 season, when Oklahoma State went 12-1 and won the Big 12 championship, represented the peak of his achievement, but the lows were equally dramatic. The 2024 season wasn't just bad, it was a complete collapse that exposed every weakness in Gundy's approach. The inability to win a single Big 12 game, the roster chaos, the fan alienation, and the loss of player trust all combined to create a situation that became untenable.
You know, maybe Mike Gundy gets a good TV job. He's charismatic. People love to hear him talk, tell stories. Or maybe he just decides to mow his lawn for the rest of his life. We'll see.
This speculation about Gundy's future captures the uncertainty that surrounds his post-coaching career. At 58, with a damaged reputation and $15 million in buyout money, his options are limited but not non-existent. Mike Gundy's legacy is ultimately one of missed opportunities and unfulfilled potential. He had the talent, the support, and the resources to build something truly special at Oklahoma State. Instead, his inability to evolve with the sport, combined with a series of self-inflicted controversies, turned him from a beloved figure into a cautionary tale about the importance of adaptation and accountability in modern college athletics. The silence speaks louder than any criticism could have. Want to see more like this? Click the suggested cards on your screen to continue watching.